What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the second EP by Tech N9ne. Basically, this project is called Seepage and it came out in the fall of 2010. Now, this is kind of an attachment project to K.O.D, which came out in late 2009. There was a series of EPs that Tech N9ne put out, and this is one of them that particularly had some leftover songs that were supposed to be on that K.O.D album but didn't happen. Now, if you don't know about K.O.D, which is King of Darkness, basically K.O.D by Tech N9ne is definitely one of Tech N9ne's best albums. I would have to say, if you like the album Relapse by Eminem, if you like that kind of horrorcore type stuff that happened from Eminem in 2009, K.O.D is basically Tech N9ne's Relapse. I just would have to say it's that same kind of concept. It's definitely had a horrific kind of time, just some real shrill and kind of spooky, ghoulish kind of beats on there. But this particular stuff that was kind of follow-ups to it were pretty good also. I definitely like this project. I definitely particularly like this project. Seepage definitely has some good stuff on here, and I would have to say now Tech N9ne switched his style up. After some of these EPs in 2010 and such, Tech N9ne kind of switched his style up. He didn't really do horrorcore on the next album, All Sixes and Sevens. I mean, it kind of did have some of that stuff, but it was just a lot more mainstream as far as that kind of went. KOD was definitely a horrific. KOD was definitely a horrorcore classic as far as that kind of went, but this has definitely got some good stuff on here. Some of these beats that are on here are really kind of shrill. I definitely like Asshole, definitely like Seepage, Bite Me is a pretty good one. Alucard is just an overall horrific kind of one that just works extremely well. So there's just some good ones kind of on here. This whole album is just a real spook of a project. This is definitely kind of classic horrorcore as far as that kind of goes, and this is just a bona fide little EP here that's definitely worth its value, and definitely you should pick it up if you can find it. It's just a good impactful amount of value as far as that kind of goes. Now there's not really a single on this project. This is just kind of a low-key kind of one. I mean, Tech N9ne was kind of underground back in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Tech N9ne might have dropped like one or two singles, something like that, but it was just not very common, so it seemed less likely that there would have been singles off an EP or something like that. But Tech N9ne did have a label where it regularly distributed all of his music. He was never someone that had to like delay his albums and stuff like that. He always put them out right when he was going to, as far as that kind of went. So that's definitely a pretty wicked thing. This is just another good concept. Definitely some underground kind of hits here. Some good stuff on here. Big Scoob and Chris Calico are on here. There's some chicas on here that help out with like the vocals and some of these extra songs. Tanisha Sanders and then Jessica Slancard. So there's some female vocals on here that help with Seepage and Bite Me. And then Trip and Comin has Chris Calico on there. So I just would have to say I'm gonna go ahead so I'm gonna go ahead and recommend the 4 songs out of 5 I recommend. So apart from Choking from It the Skit, which I'm not gonna count, basically the 4 songs out of 5 that I have to recommend here are gonna be Seepage, Asshole, Alucard, and Bite Me. The only song I don't recommend is just Trip and Come In. So basically talk about some of these. I almost want to say that Seepage was kind of the single. That's the title tracks. That would seem like that would have been the single off this project. It's a pretty low key kind of song, but this is definitely kind of a nightmarish freak song, I would have to say. It's an electric kind of ominous. It has an electric kind of ominous feel about it, and it's just vintage Tech N9ne, I would have to say, on like some darker, eerie kind of vibes. So I definitely like the approach of this one. This really works as like some haunting. This really kind of feels like a shrill, kind of ominous mansion, something like that. It's a real horrific kind of tone. Definitely like this one. This is probably the most single ready. This is probably the most single ready of all the songs on this particular project. This really has like a shrill, kind of chandelier like essence about it that just works extremely well. It definitely feels like a leftover off of KOD. Just has that same kind of approach. It's a real gothic kind of October, late October kind of horrific feel as far as that kind of goes. Definitely pretty marketable, I would have to say, within that sense. So this is just a good one. Tech N9ne is, of course, pretty lyrical, so I do like the concepts of what he talks about on these particular songs. But probably my favorite song on this album is Asshole, and it's really too bad that Necro wasn't on this song. I definitely think he probably could have destroyed this song had. I definitely think that Necro probably could have destroyed this song had he been on it with Big Scoob and Chris Calico. Originally he was supposed to be, but he just didn't get his verse in time. But Big Scoob and Chris Calico are on here, and this is just a good fit for all of them. So this is just kind of like a flashy, litty club hopper, I would have to say. It's an out and about kind of gnarled hit, definitely, and it's just an easy night out hit for Tech and his crew. So I definitely feel like this one probably has the best beat on the album. It's just the most litty and just overall kind of boppish kind of one that just has a lot of pizzazz about it, and this works as like a good kind of underground but still kind of presentable. And this is probably a little bit more commercial than Seepage, where Seepage is just a lot more horrific and kind of horrorcore of like a single as far as that kind of goes. Asshole is just kind of more of like a typical kind of underground kind of nightclub hopper from Tech N9ne, like he would do in like the late 2000s, early 2010s. This probably, like I was saying, has the best beat on the album. Alucard's a pretty good one on here. This is a pandemonium like horrorcore type tune. Definitely, I would feel like it's a freak gem with like a molten feel. And I would have to say it's an eerie regular night fare for what it is. I just would say it's pretty lyrical. So this is definitely one that just kind of works pretty well. This is probably the most horrific kind of one on here. This is the one with like the most shrill and kind of like this like ghostly kind of pandemonium, just overall craziness. This is probably one that just has like the most overall kind of barbaric and just overall like this one probably has the most overall crazed and carnivorous type tone of the whole project. So I definitely like this one. This is the most shrill kind of one. Alucard is definitely a nice one, but it also, I will say that Asshole is definitely a better beat, and I do think Seepage edges out Alucard pretty well also. But Alucard basically has the most crazy beat on here, but it's probably like the fourth best. I think even Bite Me is better than Alucard, but I just would have to say that Alucard is probably the craziest one just in terms of sheer energy. That's something to know. But then Bite Me is like the shortest song on here, and this is another one I really recommend. But this one's just really got kind of a swampy, kind of ghoulish type beat. I definitely like this one. This is a ghoulish kind of mini cut, I would have to say. It's a real swamped and gothic type feel about it. Some definite shrill night outings, I would have to say, and it just overall has a great beat. So this is just one real sexy kind of song. Definitely like the concept of this one. Just a real kind of haunting, horrific kind of one to kind of get here. Just overall like the edginess of this one. This song probably needed to be longer. It's just kind of like a good little mini song, this kind of mini interlude almost type song. This works real well. This is a real bite-sized kind of one that just has a lot of approach. But this probably, I would say, next to Asshole, this probably has like the best beat on the album. This one is just extremely good. And this is vintage, kind of dark, horrific, kind of Tech N9ne that this works extremely well. This is him being on his King of Darkness type vibes like he normally kind of is. So this just works extremely well. But to talk about the only song I didn't like on here, which is talk about the only song I don't recommend on here, which is Trippin' Comin'. Really, this song is not that terrible. I just would have to say about it, it's like typical kind of ruminating Tech N9ne. Just has a real kind of shrill, kind of evening type beat as far as that kind of goes. But I just didn't like the edginess didn't jump off the page to me enough. I just kind of felt like this was a little bit of like a lazy and kind of malaise energy that just didn't quite connect with me quite as well. I just kind of felt like this is kind of like ruminating Tech N9ne that's a little bit like Tech N9ne and like the Absolute Power and some of like the Ever Ready the Religion days. This was kind of one for more food for thought, just looking, just reflecting and that type of stuff, just being a little bit more introspective as far as that kind of goes. And it does have kind of an edgy beat. It really feels like something kind of just like Red Skies, this haunting October type fare. But I don't know, it just didn't quite have like the sheer bite to me as to how many times I would listen to it in a standard session as far as that kind of goes. I could see myself possibly listening to it, but this is kind of a more offhanded one that I just question how many times I would listen to it out of the times that were to pop up. Like most of these other songs on here, I could see have quite the infectiousness about them. But this is just kind of one. This is a little bit more of like a lazy kind of album cut that this was more lambent and this was more kind of beside the concept as to how often it would be picked in terms of that sort of concept. That's this kind of thing. But I mean, really, I liked most of this project. I mean, basically 4 out of 5 songs on here is pretty excellent. So I would have to say I'm going to score this album basically. I'm going to give this EP like a 9 out of 10. Really feel like it's that good. The social score, I'm going to go ahead and give like an 8 out of 10 because this album, the social score, I'm going to give an 8 out of 10 because this particular project does have its pizzazz about it. And I do feel like this is Tech N9ne. He has a pretty good underground following. I definitely think songs like Asshole, Seepage, and Alucard all have like particular kind of horrific pizzazz about them that just are attractive in like social kind of nettings as far as that kind of goes. It's just affable kind of energy that just works extremely well as far as just distributing it. In terms of kind of distributing it and talking about it amongst your buddies and that type of stuff, it just works pretty damn well as far as that kind of goes. And Bite Me is a nice one. So all these are really good. This really have that kind of affability. And I just would have to say, in terms of the future, like Tech N9ne dropped an album back in July, so he has put out plenty of content. He's got plenty more EPs, plenty more albums. There's plenty more stuff to kind of go around as far as that's kind of concerned. But this is pretty much like I would say like a horrorcore classic, damn near a Juggalo classic. It has personality, good amount of songs, and these are some great K.O.D leftovers that bolster the overall bite that Tech N9ne has in terms of horrorcore.